Hi, everyone. This is going to be a conversation about numerology and the number four and some of the emotional, spiritual, psychological implications of the number four as it shows up in your life and in your world. In the system that I work with, the number four is called the number of neutral mind. And neutral mind is a very high level game. So you have to think of who are the great neutral minds: Buddha, Gandhi, Nelson Mandela. Those are the great neutral minds. And so when you look at them, though, did they live in a neutral time? And the answer was no. So the only way to test to see if you're truly neutral is to put you into chaotic situations. And I wanted to talk about the number four at the moment because the world is constantly playing with this game of chaos. And everyone right now is trying to find that stability, that balance. And I think, in truth, every generation struggles with this in some way, shape, and form, whether it was a time of World War I or World War II or the Korean War or the Vietnam War or the Iraq War. I think that as human beings, we struggle with this very high concept and vibration that's called neutrality. And I think sometimes people see neutrality as passivity, which is absolutely not what the number four is about, because neutrality is an active choice. It's an active choice to observe the chaos, to be aware that the chaos is happening, and to choose equilibrium rather than frenzy, and to live life from your center. And the only way to do that is to know who you really are, so that the world is going to constantly push and pull you. And most of the time, most people are not conscious enough, and they are like puppets or pawns in someone else's chess game. And so they get pulled by the easy one is opinion. They get pulled by opinion, and opinions are based on fear, believe it or not. Opinions are based on fear. You need to be right in order to feel good about yourself and to justify a particular position that you're holding. Neutrality requires no opinion. It requires no opinion at all. So anytime you are in a state of opinion or prejudice or bias, you are absolutely not neutral. The only way to transcend this physical world is to do it from a place of abject neutrality and a kind of understanding and connecting with all that you are, all that you have been, accept all that you have been, accept all your choices and experiences in life, good, bad, right, wrong. It doesn't matter when you come to that place of neutrality, because the only way through the door is when you completely accept yourself as you are, and to recognize that in your very human, very flawed way, there's something divinely perfect about this. I like to think of it that if God was looking out through your eyes at your world, what would it see? Notice it would just be observing, like you're watching a film, and not that you wouldn't feel something, but you would be observing it, trying to understand it, trying to be objective, trying to be completely aware. Awareness is really hard. There are so many things in life that pull us off our center, because life is a panoply of chaotic emotions. And you aren't just one emotion. The world is not just one emotion. But also, people think neutrality is sort of detachment, and that is also not the case, because neutrality is a choice. It's a way to observe without feeling pushed and pulled by the different positions, and to stay in the center, to observe equally both positions, to weigh both positions, and to choose something that is in the middle. We live in a society that is all about winning. And we hear it on television. We've got these games that, people are, fighting, and becoming ninjas, and they're fighting to win. And it's this human nature that we have that really likes to win. And trust me, winning is fun, and it's a euphoric high, and it challenges us to grow in certain ways. And it's a beautiful thing. It's not a problem. But when it comes to neutrality, when you step into a place of neutrality, you recognize that the striving does not equate to arriving. So you can strive, and you can challenge yourself, and you can overcome, and you can learn a lot of things. And it's euphoric. It feels good. We're in these physical bodies that really have this desire to overcome. But what are we overcoming? If we're overcoming using ourselves to negatively influence or to justify pushing someone else down, that is not neutral. In the South American Quechua tradition, they have a word, and the word is called tinqui. Tinqui means that you're going down a trail and you see somebody else coming towards you on the trail, and you size each other up, sort of like an animal sniffing the wind. And you kind of decide, like, who is this person? Like, what is this about? And when you come together, if one person has a gift, a skill, their skill might be running, and they say to the other person, hey, I'll race you to the river. And the other person can accept or deny or not accept that. And if you choose to accept it, you run to the river. Whoever gets to the river first is culturally obligated to teach the other person how to beat them, whether that takes 1 day, 10 days, 2 weeks, a month. And what I love about that cultural exchange, because notice it's a cultural exchange, is that I have a gift, I have a skill, I have an ability. I want to show you that ability, and then I want to teach you that ability, because that's how cultures mature and grow, not by one always winning, but by teaching everyone how to win. And so that's a beautiful tradition, and I see that as neutral, because if you have a skill and gift and you're really neutral about it, you don't need to win all the time. I want you to win. I want you to have an opportunity to feel the winning, and that is coming from a neutral place inside your heart. It's not attached to an outcome. It's attached to a sharing and a gifting. So today, when you look at your life, do you look at your life as if you're neutral? And you can tell, like, if you see something on the news, which is really easy to get triggered these days, you see something on your news and you get triggered. Triggers are not neutral. They are anything but neutral. So notice those triggers, and notice that those places and those subjects and those contexts are places that you do not feel at peace or not in conflict with. What that means is that you have a part that is in conflict with another part. And if you get triggered by something, the fight is internal. Because the moment that you are at peace with the conflict inside of yourself, you're neutral, and then you notice everybody else not being neutral, but you're actually really cool. I mean, there are many times that there's a situation is happening and somebody is triggering, and I immediately say, hold on, I am totally not triggered. I'm not against your side at all. You feel that you need to hold a position at this moment, and I'm fine with that. Like, this is where you're at. That's totally cool. You don't have to convince me of your position. I don't need to be convinced if I'm neutral. I need to listen, observe, and honor and respect, and maybe give my feedback too, related to that. But I don't need to be reactive. Reactions and reactiveness, which is rampant at the moment in the world, pulls us away from that neutrality. Here's the challenge. Everyone is evolutionary wise on different levels of consciousness, and one level is not better than another. It's just a level. You have these stair steps as you mature in life. And you have to go through certain levels. So things that were super important to me when I was 16 are not important to me now. And I was very positioned and I have to be right and all this kind of stuff about that. But it seems silly now because it was just a trigger. You know, I was trying to defend myself, define myself, know who I was based on a position. And you don't have to define yourself based on a position. In fact, defining yourself based on where you're the most neutral and the most at peace is really what defines you in the end. So yes, am I proud of my struggles? Sure. Am I proud of my accomplishments? Sure. Do they define me? No. In fact, I can look at them with a sense of humor at this point, which is kind of good. So I'll give an example of something that I have become neutral about. So being a ballet dancer in the old days, you would look at your videos to see how you looked and everything. And you know, you would tend to keep these videos, and the videos are terrible because in the old days, the videos weren't very good and they were all the way at the back of the stage. And so now videos are awesome. But in my day when we were dancing, yeah, they weren't so good. And so people say to me now, oh, do you have videos of when you danced? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, oh, I want to see one. I'm like, cool. Do you want to see the one where I fell from the lift and fell flat on the floor, splat? Do you want to see the one where I did the kung fu move because I slipped and I slipped on the tape and fell all the way on my back and did a kung fu move and sprang forward again and then kept going? Do you want to see the one where I forgot an entrance? And they're like, well, don't you have any perfect ones? And I go, those are perfect. Those are perfect to me because when I fail is when I actually really saw who I was. I actually really saw my character. And I'm completely neutral about those failures because things happen. Shit happens. Things happen on stage that you would never expect in a million years. And it's just part of life. You have to learn to be neutral with the mistakes that you have and reframe them into something that you see yourself authentically, because it is when we fail and when we admit failure that our true colors really shine through, and it makes us vulnerable and it makes us sensitive and it makes us approachable and it makes us authentic. We live in a culture where it's not okay to be wrong. And if you're constantly defending yourself, it's exhausting. It's completely exhausting. And there's no peace, which is what neutrality is. There's no peace. And we live in a world where people are not at peace. They are not content with themselves. They're not happy with themselves. They're not happy with their life. And I remember doing a shamanic ceremony, and the shaman said to me, what is it with you Americans that you have everything? You have money and you have houses and you have beautiful yards and you have beautiful children, you have your health and you have these great jobs and you make a lot of money and you're not at peace. And I said, I know, it's crazy, isn't it? It's crazy. I mean, how much does your brain have to twist things around to not acknowledge the gifts that are in this life? And to constantly be looking for the problems and where it has not yet been good enough. Good enough for who? That's my comment. Good enough for who? Good enough for your ego? Well, that's a dragon you're going to be feeding for the rest of your life if you're constantly trying to fulfill the desires and the needs and the demands of your ego. Because your life is designed a certain way because this is what you need to grow and evolve. And so when you stop trying to make life into what you want and you start to accept what is being offered and honor what is being offered and stay relaxed and peaceful about that in that moment, then you become content. And then you can become content with everybody else, and you're super happy for their successes rather than jealous and petty and competitive about their successes. Because, you know, I always say it's like, how can you compare beauty, especially with women, every woman is beautiful as far as I'm concerned. We're all flowers in the garden, and the garden needs all the flowers. And all the flowers are unique and they're very special, but they all are different and they bloom at different times and they have different skills and they attract different things to them. But one flower is not more beautiful than another flower. It's all in the perception of the person seeing the flower. So one person is not better than another. It is just a different energetic composition of a soul essence that's embodied here, and it's expressing itself in a certain way. It's important to find that neutrality. Most people say they find neutrality by going and meditating or yoga or finding that place of peace within, because to find neutrality, you have to be comfortable with your human self and your spiritual self, and they have to be able to have a conversation with each other that's constructive. And that's sometimes hard for people to do because their human self they judge as limited, failed, not good enough, lazy. And then their spiritual self sometimes is incredibly demanding of these incredibly high expectations that the human self may not be able to leap that far that quickly, because I always say the human body has to have stair steps to kind of get to someplace. And most of the time people are honestly running with neither of those. They're actually running with their ego. So their ego is completely ruling the show. And they don't realize when that's the case that they are puppets. They're actually puppets to powerful people, and they're being pushed and pulled by powerful people. Freedom requires people to be at peace within themselves and to be comfortable within themselves. But to do that, you have to tell yourself the truth. And that is also something that is really lacking right now. People believe truths from others when they don't know the truth of themselves. And you will believe the truths of others when you don't have within yourself the ballast in your boat of your own truths. And to me, truth is really, really simple. It must not cause harm to anyone else. It must not cause harm to life on this planet as we know it. That includes the birds, the bees, the flowers, the trees, other human beings, black, white, yellow, pick a color. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter sexual orientation. That stuff matters. We are all down here to learn to love. That's what we're here to do. You are here to expand love and to learn how to expand love. And at first people say, oh, I love you, so my love is directed that way. But everyone can love more than one person differently, not the same, but you can love other people. And so you're down here to expand love, which means, I can love my wife, my husband, my family, my children, my mother, my father, my work associates, my dog. I can love my garden. I can love nature. I can love bike riding. I can love all these things differently. But the whole thing is that you can include so many things. Like you can love others. You can love, things in nature. You can care for. The more you love, the more you want to care for that thing. And that's exhausting. Sometimes it's a stretch to kind of care for things that maybe you love, but you don't know how to care for. And that's that learning process. To love another, you have to be relaxed within yourself, and you have to know that you have a gift to offer them. And it doesn't matter whether they receive that gift or not. It doesn't matter if you have an acknowledgement for that gift or not, because you're just being love. And that's all we're down here to do, is to be love. Anything that is not expressing love, that is expressing hate, bigotry, resentment, fear, anger, that's not love. And it cannot be neutral. Love is completely at peace with and at one with everything around it. When you know this, when you fall in love with somebody, it's like the world suddenly seems perfect, right? Well, the world is perfect not because the world is perfect. The world is perfect because you become perfect within that world. You become at one with that world. And that's the only game. That's the only truth. That's the only thing you're trying to accomplish. So, Expand your love bubble. Expand your neutral mind. Expand your ability to observe without reacting. Notice what you define as things you hate. Oh, I hate wool socks. That seems a ridiculous thing to hate, right? I hate having to wake up in the morning. Again, a ridiculous thing to hate. I mean, it's like, my God, it's so beautiful in the morning. You know, if you can't see the beauty of the light in the morning and the birds starting to sing, it's like, then you're not at one with what is in that moment, which is beauty. Like, there's beauty surrounding you all the time. When you're neutral, you see that beauty, you respect that beauty, you honor that beauty. You're so happy about that. And you move through life more gracefully, without strife, without struggle, without upset, without stress. But you can't have neutrality without truth. That's really important. I mean, to have neutrality, you have to know all angles, all truth, you know, and you have to come back to the core truth, not supposition, not opinion, not beliefs, not what somebody taught you or somebody told you, but what's true. And again, what's simply true is love, and what's simply true is acceptance of all things, and what's simply true is to be at one with and to be as fully connected to something in a moment that you possibly can. But you can't connect to something in a neutral way if you're withholding or protecting or afraid somebody's going to see who you are. It's exhausting to constantly be shielding yourself, by the way, okay? So neutrality is really transparent. Energy just flows through. It just flows through you. And so you notice it, but you don't feel attached to it or impacted by it. I remember something that John Upledger said to me when he was alive many years ago. He's the craniosacral therapy guru from West Palm Beach, Florida, and the Upledger Institute. He said, if you find yourself reacting to a client's situation like, oh my God, that's terrible, then instantly you should walk out the door, because you are not neutral and you cannot heal or help anyone ever if you're triggered and in reaction to their suffering. You're worthless. You're basically worthless. So all you're going to do is feed that fire that is their suffering, because of your own suffering, because of your own unresolved issues with the suffering. And I never forgot that. I was like, oh crap. It's like, you know, how many times have I done that in my life? And I started really recognizing that to be a healer is to be the observer. You know, to be a person who can really make a difference, you have to be safe. To be safe, you have to be neutral. You have to be not upset by that. Because there are people that say, oh, I don't want to upset you, right? And instead, what happens with me as a healer, people say, God, I feel totally like I could tell you anything. And I'm like, you could, because I'm going to completely observe it, and I'm going to be fully present with you with it. I'm going to feel what you're feeling, but I don't feel like I have to engage in your suffering in order to heal you. In fact, quite the opposite. The only way to see the door is to step back away from the trauma to get an objective viewpoint and overview and say, oh, there's a path this way. There's a way around it, or there's a way through it, and you might want to try this. And they're like, oh my God, I didn't see that before. But you can't do that if you're embroiled in the fight and swords are flailing at the same time. Okay. So hopefully that gives you some insight into the number 4 and the number neutral mind, and a lot of things for you to chew on. Thanks.